where a mute girl who can't find love in human brings a sea monster home, then lets the water in the bathroom and blocks the bathroom door with towels. She removes her clothes and takes a deep breath before reaching to her beloved monster and embracing. If we go way back before the start of this forbidden love, we start with Elisa, the main character. She was found by the river when she was young. She has 3 striking scars on her neck. Elisa is born without the ability to speak. This has made her isolated from the outside world and always feeling lonely. Elisa has only 2 friends. One is Giles, an old painter from the neighborhood who is living in poverty. The other is her colleague at work, Zelda. Elisa works as a custodian at a secret government laboratory. She has been doing this job for 10 years. Elisa's life is simple and regular. She wakes up every day and cooks dinner on time every time. She goes to work and clocks in on time. She never changes the way she cooks her eggs in the water. Although her life is boring, but Elisa still starts each day with enthusiasm. A day she is cleaning as usual. Colonel Richard brings in a large water tank. Elisa goes up to look inside the tank when no one is looking. The creature in the tank senses something and becomes irritable. The doctor is afraid that Elisa would make a mess, so he rushes everyone else out of the lab. Ever since the creature is brought into the lab, the cleaners are not allowed to enter the place. They can only clean the toilets every day until an accident happens where Elisa and the others are busy, suddenly heard noises, and after a short time Colonel Richard comes out holding his hand and missing 2 fingers. After minutes, when Elisa and Zelda are eating, the supervisor comes running nervously and urges them both to bring their cleaning tools and follow him into the lab. At that moment, the lab floor was covered with blood. Seemingly it was the creature who did this with Richard, but the girls don't dare to ask questions to make sure what happened. They just focus on cleaning up, and all the signs point to some scary creature in the tank. Elisa isn't scared at all. She is more curious about the tank, where she hears a low roar from the tank and unconsciously walks forward and finally sees the true face of the creature in the tank. It is a human-like amphibian man. His skin is dark blue, also has fins, but Elisa doesn't have time to look at him closely, where the supervisor comes in to check on her cleaning. From that day on, Elisa couldn't stop thinking about going back to meet the monster again, as the woman cannot help being curious to see the monster up close in the tank. One day she peels the eggs and waits until successfully she draws the monster out. She finally gets a good look at the monster, half human, half fish. She tries to pass the egg to the monster, however, the monster reacts harshly as it seems to be afraid of people. Elisa panics and puts down the egg and tries to show him that she did not mean any harm. He grabs the egg quickly and dives underwater. Since Elisa had a close encounter with the monster, she is less afraid of him. She always takes the time to clean the lab when no one is around. She takes out the eggs she had prepared and gave them to the monster to eat. Gradually they get to know each other more and more. They both, although are not able to communicate through talking, so they can do sign language and bond through music. As their relationship grows closer, Elisa also dances with the mop and the monster watches her silently from the sidelines. While they having their fun in harmony, their actions are witnessed by the doctor. The doctor is shocked because his research had shown the opposite. He thought that the monster is cruel and inhuman. He didn't expect the monster to show its gentle side to Elisa. That day Elisa sneaks into the lab with the eggs as usual, but this time she finds the monster chained to the ground and bleeding. Moments later it turns out that the monster's abuser is Mr. Richard, the security chief, who was bitten off his fingers by the monster days before. Richard takes a baton and stabs the monster in the chest to get back at him. Elisa hears the monster screams and feels scared. Until the door opens again, the monster had fallen in a pool of blood. The men don't care about the monster's wounds, they just want to find out what this monster could be used for. Elisa had only one thing on her mind now. She had to get the monster out. As soon as she gets home, she talks to Giles about saving the monster. Giles thinks her idea is crazy. There is no way it would work. But Elisa keeps gesturing in sign language and tells Giles about the days she spent with the monster. Giles feels the deep emotion between Elisa and the monster through her movements and expressions. Finally, he is convinced to work with Elisa to complete this project. At the laboratory, it turns out that real identity of the doctor is a Soviet spy. He hopes that the Soviets will help him to save the monster. But his boss is not willing to take the risk and just wants us not to continue the research. So his boss gave the doctor a dose of poison and tells him to find a way to poison the monster. This way the monster would be contaminated with the drug and will lose its research value. The doctor is very disappointed with this decision. Just as he is preparing the poison and walking into the lab, he senses something strange in the surveillance footage. He realizes that another organization is trying to save the monster. and that group is Elisa and her friends. Elisa had already made all the preparations for the rescue with Zelda and Giles. They plan to work together to accomplish this daunting task. According to their plan, Elisa would first hide the monster in the cleaning tool truck and then quietly move him to the parking lot. Giles could then drive the away, but their rescue operation had barely begun. As the doctor comes to the lab, Elisa gets disappointed. She thinks their plan has been discovered, but in fact the doctor is there to help them. The two of them work together to stuff the monster into the cleaning truck. The doctor also gives Elisa a box of mineral salts, because the monster must live in the salt water to survive. Not only that, he also used a bomb to blow up the base of power system and knocks the security guard in the parking lot. The group worked together to transfer the monster to the car. Giles quickly drove away from the experimental base. The head of security realizes the monster had disappeared when it was too late. At the other side, Elisa has succeeded on taking the beast home. Then she gestures to the water monster in sign language, "You are with me now." The woman takes off her clothes at the door and walks towards the monster in the bathtub. She goes inside the tub and draws the curtain. But this is only Elisa's fantasy. Since Elisa had rescued the monster, she knows that the monster could only live in the salt water of the tub. He would never feel comfortable and free. The monster would become weaker and weaker. The only way he could survive was to return to the sea. According to the weather forecast, the 10th of this month is a stormy day. With enough water, the monster will be able to swim down the city's sewers and return to the deep sea. There is still some time before they are ready to release the monster. Elisa and Zelda continue to go to work so that they won't be suspected by the lab. Although Colonel Richard is suspecting them, but they still manage to deceive them all with their cool acting skills. Elisa comes home from work that day and found Giles injured. When she asked, she found out that the monster had snuck into the living room and eaten a cat. The monster seemed to realize that he had done something wrong, so he left the cat and ran out of the house. He also accidentally cut Giles' arm. Elisa immediately runs out to find that the monster hadn't gone far. He is found watching movie in the cinema downstairs. Elisa rushes to bring him home. The monster looks at the injured Giles and apologizes to him. He first touches Giles' head, then he covers the wound on Giles' arm with his palm. Then he went back to the bathtub. Elisa doesn't blame him, either. She gently touches him to comfort him. The moment their skin touched, a wonderful feeling comes over them. The monster tries to reach for Elisa's hand. Elisa subconsciously flees the bathroom in fear, but this fascinating emotion is always on her mind. Eventually she breaks through all the self-restraints and re-enters the bathroom. By the time passing by, the love between the two has grown as strong as the water that filled the room, and they don't care if it's spilling out of the floor and windows downstairs in the cinema. The sleeping audience is suddenly awakened by the water droplets. Giles, who receives the complaint, when enters the room, it looks like the door to the bathroom is breaking apart. Giles rushes and pulls the door open. Then a bathroom full of water pours out. Giles looks into the bathroom with curiosity. The mute girl was happily holding the water monster in her arms, and the water monster is emitting a blue light. Giles knew he had come at the wrong time and closed the door silently. Afterwards he expresses his shock to Elisa, although he paints what he saw in the bathroom and narrates the following. Elisa could not speak since she was a child. Deep inside she had always longed for care and love, but he never thought that the mute girl and the water monster would have feelings. They thought they could wait until the 10th of the month in peace, but the head of security had already found out that the doctor was the suspect who let the monster go. Although the doctor denied it, but he is still being watched. Michalkov, the doctor's Soviet superior, also realizes that the doctor had betrayed the organization and let the monster go and ruined everything. Michalkov plans to get rid of the doctor. By the night of the 10th, it is raining heavily. Michalkov also starts his operation. He took the doctor to the countryside and shoots him by the help of his bodyguard. Colonel Richard, the head of security, who had been watching the doctor, shows up and shoots the others and beats up the dying doctor and forces the doctor to tell about the monster. In the end, the doctor only said that the monster had no name and no number, they just clean. Richard ponders over the meaning of this statement and suddenly had an idea. He immediately switches his investigation to Elisa and Zelda. Zelda is very loyal. She pretends not to know anything in the face of the threat, but her husband gives up all her secrets and tells everything. He even tells him about their plan to release the monster at night in the river. Richard learns that the monster is at Elisa's place, but by that time he is late and immediately drives back to the pier. At that moment, Elisa and Giles were helping the monster to the pier. The monster touches Giles' head with his hand for the last time in the heavy rain. He also said goodbye to Elisa with the sign language she taught him just as they were parting. Richard arrives and knocks Giles, then shoots Elisa and the monster. Elisa's life was in danger and the monster is back on his feet. His body glows with an eerie blue light. His gunshot wound had already healed itself through powerful superpowers. The monster did not hesitate to give Richard a fatal blow. Then he picks up the dying Elisa and jumps into the sea. He kisses Elisa deeply in the sea. A short time after, the 3 scars on Elisa's neck suddenly open up. Bubbles came out of her mouth, evolves fish gills. She is now able to breathe freely in the water. They hug each other tightly and slowly sink into the deep sea. She sinks into the water with the monster in her arms and feels love, life, and freedom.